has in mind about changes not seen for 100 years?
Michael, I think that by changes not seen in 100 years, he's referring to the end of the United States, or at least the end of the United States atop the international system. And the other words that Putin heard from Xi Jinping were these. Just after this, these changes are coming, not seen in 100 years. And then Xi Jinping said, and together we will be driving this change. So really what he's saying is that China is the world's hegemon right now, and that everyone should ditch the U.S. and start obeying China. And it shows a very dangerous mentality. We heard from very beginning of the Biden administration, China started talking about the United States can't talk to China from a position of strength anymore. Then we heard Chinese propaganda on the fall of Afghanistan was explicit about the U.S. no longer being able to exercise power effectively. Of course, Vladimir Putin thought that because he invaded Ukraine. And here we have Xi Jinping confirming it. So it's a dangerous mentality.
And in terms of the cooperation or the common cause between China and Russia, what is their greatest point of agreement and joint focus in terms of their relationship?
Getting rid of the United States is their greatest point of agreement. Because Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, remember, they've seen each other now, in-person chat, 40th time. Whereas, to put that into context, Xi Jinping has met Biden once in person, and that was last November at the G20 in Bali. But Putin and Xi Jinping basically see the world in the same terms, and they identify the same adversary, and that, of course, is us. And you got a very interesting partnership where China clearly is the strongest power, but Vladimir Putin actually is controlling the partnership because he's going out and doing things like invading Ukraine, and he knows that China will back him up. So China, whatever it thinks of the invasion of Ukraine, is supporting Putin, and that means that these two countries are working very closely together. They're both regimes. They both abhor the United States, even hate us, and therefore they're working to destroy our society.
In terms of the so-called peace plan for Ukraine and Russia that Xi Jinping so proudly delivered, was there anything in that plan that surprised you at all?
The February 24th plan, 12 points, the answer is no. This plan was directed towards helping Russia. The core of it is, I think it's point 2, which is the ceasefire. But that ceasefire would leave Russia in possession of Ukrainian territory. And as John Kirby, our National Security Council spokesperson, said, that's just not acceptable. Yeah, peace is something we want, but peace with Russia off of Ukraine's territory. And the reason why is that if Russia is left in possession of Ukraine, Xi Jinping will see that as a big green light to attack somebody, and that means the war spreads across the Eurasian landmass.
The Americans, according to a brand new Gallup poll, asked about our greatest enemy. They picked China over Russia, despite Russia's current involvement in a very bloody and horrific war. And yet people on balance, even though they saw China as our greatest enemy in another aspect of the survey, there are slightly more positive views of China than of Russia. Why do you think that is?
That's a great question. It's probably they have positive views of the Chinese people. But if you specifically ask them of the Chinese regime, I'd probably get a very different answer, because this regime has made it very clear they're waging war on us. They've actually come out and said that in May 2019, a quote-unquote people's war. That's a phrase which has great resonance in Communist Party circles. And that means that they feel that they have every right to kill Americans, which they've been doing with fentanyl, by the way, because the fentanyl gangs are supported by the Communist Party. And they have every right to destroy the United States. We Americans don't want to pay attention to that. Of course, we didn't pay attention to Islamic terrorists, even after they killed 6 Americans in 1993 by detonating a bomb under the North Tower of the World Trade Center. And we just ignored it until, of course, 9/11, when on one day we lost 2,977 Americans.
Okay, in terms of the dangers right now, if you were advising a presidential candidate, say Ron DeSantis, who needs some help in the advice department, seems to me, what should he do differently about confronting Russia and China in terms of the positions he takes and the way he expresses himself?
Yeah. This is the same advice for DeSantis as for every other presidential candidate, including the one sitting in the Oval Office. And that is to understand that the Ukraine war is a proxy struggle. It's a proxy war for the two superpowers, and that we have to understand that if we lose that proxy war, we're going to be fighting wars elsewhere in all probability. I know DeSantis doesn't want to hear that. That's okay. I can understand why he doesn't want to endorse an unpopular position when he's running for president. Almost nobody would. But the point is, whether it's popular or unpopular, we are going to be facing conflicts across the Eurasian landmass and probably across North Africa if we do not prevail in Ukraine. And right now, the Biden administration is not trying to prevail in Ukraine. They're just trying to manage the situation.
What needs to change?
We need to understand that it is in the national security interest of the United States to drive Russia off of Ukrainian territory. That's extremely dangerous. But to say that a policy is extremely dangerous is not a meaningful objection. Because of truly misguided policies, American policies, every option going forward is truly dangerous, and we have to understand the significance of what's happening now.
And nobody doing more important work in helping that understanding than Gordon G. Chang. Go to Gordon G. Chang on Twitter.